In the past 2 decades, a quiet exodus has been reshaping America, not through war or economic collapse, but through a growing disillusionment with what the American dream has become. Today, over 9 million Americans live outside the United States, the largest number in the country's history. They are not refugees or wanderers, they are teachers, engineers, retirees, entrepreneurs, and digital workers, all seeking something they felt America could no longer offer. So where did they go? Why did they leave? And what does this migration say about the future of the world's most powerful nation? At first glance, the idea of leaving the richest, most advanced country on earth seems paradoxical. For decades, America was the destination, the place where the world's tired and poor arrived to start again. But the flow has begun to reverse. In the early 2000s, the number of Americans living abroad hovered around 4 million. By 2025, that number had more than doubled. The reasons are complex: rising inequality, unaffordable healthcare, political polarization, and a relentless cost of living that outpaced wages. In short, for millions, the math of life in America stopped adding up. A middle-class family once symbolized stability. Today, it often means debt, burnout, and anxiety. From housing to healthcare, the system that promised opportunity has turned into a treadmill. Many Americans began to look beyond their borders for a different kind of freedom. Not the political freedom their ancestors sought, but financial and emotional freedom. One of the biggest drivers of this migration is technology. The internet has made geography optional. Tens of thousands of Americans have joined the new digital nomad movement, people working remotely while living in countries where their dollar stretches further. Mexico, Portugal, Thailand, Colombia, and Indonesia have become modern hubs for this global tribe. In cities like Medellin, Chiang Mai, and Lisbon, it's common to hear English mixed with Spanish, Thai, or Portuguese in co-working spaces. These aren't tourists, they're residents, often working for US companies while living abroad. A $2,000 monthly income in Los Angeles barely covers rent, but in Mexico City or Bali, it funds a comfortable lifestyle. For many young Americans, this isn't about escaping their country, but escaping its economic system. Remote work has transformed what it means to be American. For the first time in history, millions can work anywhere with Wi-Fi, and that realization has created a silent revolution. Then there are the retirees. The average Social Security check in America is around $1,900 a month, barely enough to cover rent in most US cities. For millions of retirees, the dream of a peaceful retirement has collided with a brutal economic reality. The US is one of the most expensive countries to grow old in. But abroad, the story changes. In Costa Rica, Panama, Ecuador, or Portugal, that same $1,900 can fund a life of dignity, full-time healthcare, a safe home, and a sense of community. Healthcare is a major factor. A simple hospital visit in the US can cost more than a year's worth of living expenses in another country. Many Americans who relocate say they feel human again, treated as people, not billing codes. There's also the cultural warmth. In smaller towns across Latin America or Europe, life moves slower. People talk, share meals, and walk instead of drive. For many Americans, the transition feels like a return to values their own country left behind. Beneath every personal story lies a deeper current, a loss of faith in the American system. The dream of work hard, get ahead has eroded. Wages have stagnated for decades while housing, education, and healthcare costs have exploded. Many Americans now work multiple jobs and still struggle to save. For some, the decision to leave was purely practical. For others, it was spiritual, a search for meaning in a world obsessed with productivity. A growing number of Americans say they no longer recognize their country. Politics have become tribal, news toxic, and the culture increasingly divided. Abroad, they find a sense of peace from the noise, a mental liberation that's as powerful as the financial one. Some even describe it as a kind of rebirth. Living abroad forces adaptation. It breaks routines and assumptions. Many report feeling more curious, open-minded, and grateful. Ironically, leaving America often makes people rediscover what being American really means: innovation, resilience, and the courage to start over. So, where exactly have these 9 million Americans gone? The answer spans every continent, but certain regions stand out. 1. Mexico tops the list, with over 1 million U.S. citizens officially residing there and many more unofficially. Proximity, cost of living, and culture make it the easiest transition. 2. Canada comes next, offering familiar comforts but better healthcare and safety. For many Americans, it's a softer version of home. 3. Europe, especially Portugal, Spain, France, and Germany, attracts those seeking culture, stability, and universal healthcare. Digital nomad and golden visa programs have accelerated the trend. 4. Asia, from Thailand to Vietnam and the Philippines, has become a magnet for remote workers and retirees alike. The low costs and high quality of life make it irresistible. 5. Latin America and the Caribbean, from Costa Rica to Colombia and Dominican Republic, appeal to those wanting warmth, nature, and affordability. Together, these destinations form a kind of alternative America abroad, communities of expats living parallel lives, connected through social media but detached from the homeland. The global American is a new kind of citizen, less tied to land, more to lifestyle. They carry U.S. passports but often pay taxes, vote, and build communities elsewhere. Some start businesses catering to both locals and foreigners: cafes, schools, tech startups, wellness retreats. The U.S. State Department estimates that if all Americans living abroad formed a state, it would be larger than Virginia or Washington state. Yet, these citizens rarely appear in the national conversation. They are invisible in domestic politics, but their choices reflect deep systemic cracks. For decades, America exported its culture, movies, music, and fast food. Now, it's exporting its people. Some analysts call it reverse globalization. Instead of the world moving to America, America is moving to the world. This shift also signals something profound. The idea of national belonging is changing. For a generation raised on the internet, home is not a place, it's a connection. Behind every departure are the push factors, forces driving people out. Housing costs. The median home price in the U.S. now exceeds $400,000. In many cities, owning a home is no longer realistic for millennials or Gen Z abroad. That same amount can buy a villa or seaside apartment. Healthcare. The number one cause of bankruptcy in America is medical debt. Even insured citizens face crushing bills. For many, this is the final straw. Education and debt. Student loans haunt an entire generation. Meanwhile, some countries offer free or affordable universities open to foreigners. Work culture. The American workweek is among the longest in the developed world. Paid vacations are minimal, burnout is normalized, and rest is often seen as weakness. Safety and politics. Gun violence, social unrest, and political polarization leave many feeling unsafe, not physically but emotionally. Combined, these pressures create a quiet revolution, not through protest but through departure. If the push is despair, the pull is hope. Many countries actively court Americans through digital nomad visas, retirement programs, and low-cost healthcare. They see opportunity in welcoming foreign income without strain on their job markets. Portugal's golden visa brought tens of thousands of Americans seeking EU access. Thailand's elite visa offers long-term stays for a modest fee. Costa Rica's pensionado program welcomes retirees with guaranteed income. And countries like Mexico require little bureaucracy at all, making relocation easy. Beyond logistics, there's an emotional pull, the promise of simplicity. In places where community matters more than consumption, many Americans rediscover balance. A walkable neighborhood, fresh food, time with family. These small joys, once taken for granted, now define a new kind of wealth. The story of America has always been about freedom, from kings, from poverty, from oppression. But for many modern Americans, true freedom meant leaving home. It's an irony that echoes through history. The land that once symbolized opportunity has become too expensive for opportunity to thrive. The culture that once prized individuality now feels isolating. And so, the pursuit of happiness has taken a global route. Yet, most who leave do not reject America, they mourn it. They love their country, but not its direction. They still carry its values, ambition, creativity, optimism. But they express those values elsewhere, in cities and towns far from the stars and stripes. In a way, this migration is a love letter, written in absence. It says, we still believe in freedom, but we had to find it somewhere else. One of the least discussed outcomes of this migration is the birth of a new global middle class, made up of Westerners living abroad, connected by technology, fluent in multiple currencies and cultures. This group is redefining what it means to be middle class. Instead of owning a house, they rent globally. Instead of chasing promotions, they chase balance. Instead of retiring at 65, they live fully at 35. The pandemic accelerated this shift. Remote work, digital businesses, and online education made physical borders irrelevant. A laptop became a passport to freedom. And as living costs in the US soared, millions realized the world was open if they dared to step outside. Leaving one's homeland is not just logistical, it's deeply emotional. Many Americans abroad describe an initial culture shock, the slower pace, different values, unfamiliar systems. But over time, they find peace and simplicity. There's also a psychological relief in being free from America's constant pressure to perform. Abroad, success is not measured by salary or title. People live, not just work. Yet, there's homesickness too, for family, language, and the subtle comforts of familiarity. Most expats describe their identity as in between, never fully American anymore, but never fully local either. They live in translation, between cultures, between worlds. But that in-between space can also be fertile. It allows new perspectives, empathy, and creativity. Many say they understand America better from afar than they ever did living within it. When millions of its citizens leave, America loses more than population. It loses talent, capital, and cultural influence. Many of those who relocate are educated, entrepreneurial, and globally minded. They take their skills, spending power, and innovation with them. It's a kind of soft brain drain, subtle but significant. The US remains a magnet for global talent, but it's now also a source of global migrants. The government doesn't track these citizens closely. They don't appear in unemployment numbers, but their absence shapes the economy in invisible ways, from housing demand to consumption patterns. Some economists warn that if living abroad becomes the new middle-class aspiration, it could erode domestic confidence, and widen the gap between those who can leave and those who can't. Looking ahead, this trend is unlikely to reverse. Climate change, automation, and the rising cost of living will continue to pressure Americans to look outward. The next frontier isn't just the internet, it's the planet itself. Countries are competing for mobile citizens, offering tax breaks, residency programs, and quality of life that America struggles to match. By 2030, experts predict over 12 million Americans will live abroad. They will form communities across continents, teaching, coding, investing, raising families. America will remain their passport, but not necessarily their home. In the end, this is not just a story about migration. It's a story about transformation, of identity, of economy, of belonging. When Americans move abroad, they don't just change themselves, they change the places they move to. From Lisbon to Bali, the influx of Westerners has reshaped local economies. Cafes, yoga studios, and English language schools boom. Rents rise and tensions grow between locals and newcomers. This raises uncomfortable questions. Are Americans abroad truly escaping the system, or simply recreating it elsewhere? Many expats are aware of this paradox. They try to integrate, learn languages, and support local businesses. But the dynamic remains. Privilege travels. Still, there's potential for balance. When approached with humility, this global migration can foster cultural exchange, innovation, and empathy, bridging worlds instead of dividing them. Ultimately, where 9 million Americans went, is not just about geography, it's about belonging. For some, leaving was a rejection. For others, an evolution. They left in search of something America once promised, the freedom to live life on their own terms. They found it not in wealth, but in simplicity. Not in power, but in peace. Their stories challenge the notion that success must look a certain way. They remind us that borders are lines we draw, not walls that define us. And as technology blurs those lines further, the idea of home will continue to evolve. Maybe, in the future, being American won't mean living in America. It will mean carrying American values of independence and curiosity into the wider world. In that sense, the 9 million abroad are not lost, they're pioneers of a new era. In the end, where did 9 million Americans go? They went everywhere. To mountain villages in Portugal, beach towns in Mexico, jungles of Thailand, and cities of Europe. They went searching for balance and found freedom. They traded status for simplicity, pressure for peace, and illusion for experience. And perhaps, in doing so, they rediscovered something their ancestors once knew. That sometimes, to find a better life, you must leave home, not to escape it, but to understand it. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.